let's go into the episode that I have chosen. It is season 11, episode 5, Hardwired. This first aired in 2009, I believe, and I think this is a good, like, if you're just being introduced to Law and Order SVU, this is a good like template episode to get you started on it. So I would just like to describe for you, like, okay, this is the cold open. So it's a private school is getting out, and there's a mother waiting in her car to pick up her kids, and then another mother rear ends her car, like goes over to the window and starts hitting her. Like a fight breaks out. The other mother is played by guest star of the week. Another very important part about SVU, which we'll get into, the sheer quality and quantity of their guest stars over their 21 season run is quite unparalleled. The guest star, or one of the guest stars in this episode, is played by Rosie Perez. Rosie Perez is the mother attacking another mother as school gets out, and then it becomes clear that Rosie Perez is attacking the mother because her, like, the woman she's attacking, her kid accused her son of molesting him. So Elliot and Olivia show up, and I believe Elliot gets kicked in the nuts by Rosie Perez. And the stinger going into the opening credits is Elliot goes, "Now I know why they call them special victims."
Which just like doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't even make
like,
sense.
what?
Yeah, it like no other show would dare do that after like something as sordid as like a child molesting another child.
So go into the opening credits. Then we get into the first segment. So obviously Olivia and Elliot got to talk to the mom who was attacked, and she says that Rosie Perez's son, a kid named Corey, they had him over for a sleepover, and when she was checking in on the boys, she found them engaged in nude wrestling. Her son denies it and says that they were just playing around. It was just wrestling. So then, that's Olivia was debriefing the mother who got hit with the car. Stabler is in the other box, talking to Rosie Perez and her son, the one who's been accused of molesting this other kid. And he's sort of like, he says, was it your idea to wrestle naked? And Corey, the son, says, games are more fun when you're naked. And then he's like, do you play naked games with other kids? And it turns out this kid, Corey, has been playing naked games with a lot of kids. He's been playing naked games.
Buckle in.
And Rosie Perez is like freaking out. She has no idea what's going on. They go out behind the two-way mirror, and BD Wong is there, and they're like, what do you make of this? Is this just sexual experimentation or a sign that the kid was molested? BD Wong goes, he's engaging in mastery play. This is the expertise he's bringing. So they decide that they're not going to charge the kid, but they still have to charge his mom for assaulting another mother. But of course, Cragen uses this as a pretext to like separate the mother from her son, take the son to a hospital to get him checked out, do like a run a rape kit on the son to see what's going on.
Incredible how often they love to separate parents from kids on this show. Although I will say that I think this show, and I've said this to Will as we've watched it before, I think this show in the defendants, like, they demonstrate a mastery of their civil rights that I don't think most people in real life have. Like they'll say like, oh, well, I have a right not to be, I have a right to be there when my kid is being questioned, things like that. Which, except for Jay-Z, we're not reminded of our civil rights very often.
So they take Corey to the hospital, and they're like, they still don't know what's going on with this kid. So they examine him and find out that he has chlamydia. So right. Off to a great start on this show, and then of course, BD Wong's character, Dr. Wong, they find out about that he received a massage from his wrestling coach. Okay, and Corey says a lot of the guys get rub downs from him. After a meet, he has a pizza party at his house, and sometimes he gives us massages. So it's like, okay. Wrestling coach massaging kids. Then they find out that he's basically changed his name after moving from Baltimore after serving time for raping a child, and has managed to get a job as a wrestling coach. This seems like an open and shut case. Felix, when I watched this and he said he was he said he was from Baltimore, all I could think about was Stav's joke about the uncle who molested the kid who didn't finish the obstacle course at Discovery Zone.
I would have loved that if they had to bring in Dundalk Guy as a witness. That was the entire episode, just enticing him with chicken bosses to testify. I don't want to talk about it. It's like traumatic. Olivia Benson having to talk to like her toughest victim yet.
Yeah, he said he was going to get me. He said he was going to get me tickets for the Ravens game. What was I supposed to do? So, like, this is very important, though. They have to introduce the first wrong suspect, right? It's like, okay, yeah, this guy's a child rapist who's gotten a job teaching kids wrestling at a private school.
We let that one through, but it turns out that guy's not that bad.
Well, I mean, at least not as bad.
He's not the baddie we're looking for.
Yeah, he's a baddie. So.
He hasn't raped a child yet.
Well, I mean, not
well in his new position.
Yeah.
What's he gonna do? Run for the U.S. House of Representatives, Oaks?
So okay, then they're like, okay, well, this guy's alibi checks out. The kid is adamantly saying that it wasn't his wrestling coach who abused him. So then we can see the home life of Corey and Rosie Perez, and we're introduced to the stepfather, played by Officer Presbo from The Wire. I forget his name. I'll just call him Presbo from The Wire.
And you thought shooting a kid's eye was bad.
And once they introduce this guy, you're like, well, the gig is up here. This guy is obviously molesting.
Jig.
Yeah.
The jig is up?
The jig is up? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
This guy's obviously molesting his stepson, and it's like, Rosie Perez and her son, like she was in an abusive relationship. She was addicted to drugs. She was like living on the streets.
They went through the shelter system.
Yeah, they were living in a shelter, and then like he was volunteering at like a soup kitchen, which is like always a bad sign. That's a big red flag if you got a guy volunteering to help other people.
Yeah, that's why Will and I don't do it. We want to stay away from the sicko volunteers.
And he's using it to gain access to vulnerable women and their children, and. So, like Elliot cottons to this, and the stepfather is obviously very much coaching the son. He's like, "Now, it was your wrestling coach who molested you, right?" And the kid's like, "I don't want to talk about it." And Elliot understands what's going on there, so he's like, "Listen, buddy, I'm going to park outside of your house and stay there around the clock in case this kid needs help or whatever." Which brings us to segment 2 after the first commercial break. Elliot is on a stakeout, and we get this line from Benson. And they're like talking about this guy and why he's sus. And Olivia goes, "It's the perfect family for a pedophile. Marry mom and get unlimited access to Corey."
Watching Chris's face through this, I'm sorry, there's no video feed. Just cringing upon cringing. That's what this show is. That's what this show is.
I watched this show with a romantic partner, and she said, "I'm scared of you because you've seen so many episodes of this. I think you're scary because you watch this show to go to sleep."
Felix romantic partner reveal.
I've seen maybe like 4 total episodes of SVU, so I know the vibe. But the thing that you're getting at here, that describing any discrete moment of SVU, even though it is objectively the most normal TV show of all time, sounds completely insane.
Yes.
It's really
sounds
crazy.
Like the most
it's really crazy
lurid propaganda you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, like the idea that this is normal TV for Americans.
I know,
and it's just like, unlimited access to Corey. And all of us sitting at home on our couches are just like,
being like, yes, that would be a perfect family for a pedophile.
Yeah, I gotta gather my family around to watch this.
No, if we can leave you from anything from this show, this is objectively not normal that this show is the most popular, longest running TV show in American history. So they know what's going on in this family. So they say Olivia has a go at Rosie Perez, woman to woman, to tell her what's going on. And like as she describes what's happening, Rosie Perez has like a usual suspect style fucking realization that her husband has been raping her child for years. And they confront Corey at school and tell him it's okay to talk to the police. Now, I'd like to talk about this scene. We're like, so SVU is a show that deals in large part with as they say, the uniquely heinous and awful aspect of child abuse of any kind. And that's certainly true. But I will say it makes me question like how seriously they take the message of the show. That this is something Catherine and I have talked about watching the show as long as we have. The number of child actors that this show has basically abused by making them do take after take of a scene where they have to be like tears in their eyes, be like, and then he said we would have to touch our wieners together. And it's just like, I have the parents of this child actor, the writers and producers of this show. Like it makes me feel in some respect, the acting performances that they require out of these child victims is in itself a kind of abuse.
Imagine making your kid do that and then they don't get the part. Imagine like corralling your kid and like stick and carrot, bribing them with snacks, threatening them with early bedtime to say the line like, he made me stick my butt open and put his hand in it. And then you don't hear anything for 4 weeks. And then eventually you get a form letter saying they went with someone else.
I mean,
you have to feel like the worst parent ever.
If the new season of Nathan For You taught us anything, it's that child actors really take this stuff to heart.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, that kid auditioning goes home and is like, oh, maybe this happened.
Oh, yeah.
That's my medical opinion.
When you're 4, how could you tell the difference? Like, Jesus.
Yeah, really.
So, so they are like, Corey, says what's been going on at home. They arrest the stepfather. There's the classic Law and Order scene of they cut to the skell, the creep, the sicko. They cut to his like place of work. Stabler barges in. They're like, he's like, you can't harass. This is harassment. And then they're like, you'll be getting harassed in prison. And also the prison rape jokes on this show really, really go over the top.
Yeah.
Well, they're used as threats.
Yeah.
Which I guess, the joke is kind of inherent. But yeah, the notion that like, because these guys are top tier sickos, just like being, and a spoiler alert, but the ultimate bad guy in this episode is going to get 3,200 years in prison. The notion that like, that's not a sufficient punishment. He also has to be repeatedly raped in prison is really, a compass for where the show's morality is at or sense of justice.
I like that you alluded to the ultimate bad guy in the episode, which is not even the guy raping his stepson.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, SVU episodes work almost like Dark Souls worlds, where there's a tutorial. There's like a tutorial sicko where it's like, oh, that's easy.
Yes.
You're like, oh, that's easy. You just check the sex offender registry and see if someone changed their name. Then you have like the first like real boss, and that's like, the respectable white collar rapist or pedophile. And then like, the world boss, the guy who you can transpose their soul to get like a pedophile sword after you beat them. And that'll be like the guy, that'll be a guy who's like, I'm the head of like, the Rotary Club for pedophiles for the entire East Coast.
Well, that is where this episode goes, because this is the second commercial segment. Corey has talked to the cops. He has finally been able to admit the terrible abuse that's been happening to him in the home. They arrest the stepfather, and Benson says, "Corey, it's over. My partner arrested Thomas. Everything's fine. He's playing his PSP." She explains to Rosie Perez that they can keep their apartment. They'll take it out of Thomas's name.
There's at least 2 commercial breaks left.
Everything is going to be fine.
And the worst, sorry, but one of the worst lines in SVU history, after Benson's like, we're going to clean out his bank accounts, Rosie Perez goes, damn, girl, you got a little bit of gangsta in you.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
That was great.
So Elliot's got the stepfather, Officer Presbo, in the box, and he's like, we got your laptop. You're going away. Like he says, you're gonna have a 300-pound daddy in prison. We got lots of photos of you doing all this sick shit on your laptop. So, here's where it gets interesting. The perp is like, well, you've got me dead to rights, but I've got something to offer in trade. And that offer is
King Pedophile.
I will help you arrest the president of the Pedophilia Association of America, which is a guy who runs a civil rights organization for pedophiles, which becomes like basically the plot of this episode. And it's something that they always do with child sex offender or with pedophiles on the show is that when they're always like, how could you do what you do? And like the pedophile will always bring up this idea that like, well, actually, the DSM considered homosexuality a mental illness until the 70s. So like, this is just a normal sexual orientation. And boy, oh boy, that's where this show goes.
Yeah, the pedophiles talk about it like it's ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah, yeah.
So the president of the Rotary Club of Pedophiles of the East Coast United States is coming over to his house for dinner that night, in which he is going to allow him access to the pedophile club and like transfer something. I don't know. This part was like a bit glossed over. He's like, I have a flash drive with the names of 5,000 pedophiles in my club.
The names and like the child porn that they were forced to make in order to be, child porned in to the
Yeah,
to the
he's
club.
like, yeah, it's like
Seems
it's
really
almost
bad
like
OPSEC.
yeah, it's like a Happy Days episode premise almost. Like, oh, the head of the regional head of the company is coming over and they're
coming
like,
over for dinner? I don't have anything to serve.
What are we gonna make him? And then then the wife, like the meatloaf,
The
blows
roast is
up,
burned.
blows
Yeah.
up in the oven or something.
So
wait,
like,
what, steamed kids? Oh, it's a regional term. It's from upstate.
So, okay, what happens next is the reason that I selected this episode to talk about, because it is literally like something that can only happen on this team. It is so fucking funny. So basically, remember when they told Corey that everything was okay? Elliot's like, we can't blow this opportunity to arrest 5,000 pedophiles. They're like, well, what are we going to do? And they're like, aha. They talked to ADA Stephanie Marsh. What they're going to do is send special victim Corey back into the apartment with his abusive stepfather and to meet with another pedophile. They're going to send a victim of pedophilia undercover to entice out a pedophile. And like, this is one of the most insane things I've ever seen on a show. They're like, and then Corey, they're like, are you sure we can put this kid in that much danger? And then Corey's like, if it'll help other kids, I want to do it. So like somehow the ADA and New York City Police Department, they just sign off on this idea of just letting a child victim go undercover to entice a rapist out.
It's literally like the pedophile in space. Like this is our first and best idea. This is exactly what we wanted to happen.
Yeah. By the way, I would say the average child victim they make go undercover or like testify or do anything is on average 30% more compliant than the usual like adult woman victim. You know?
Oh yeah, the adult women victims are unruly. They don't trust the cops. They probably like stand by their boyfriend or something. But the kids are very community minded and like, well, if it'll help other kids.
Yeah. See, the thing is I mean, they're all special, but it's very clear in the show that some victims are just, they don't want to help themselves.
You know? As my mother always said, God helps those who help themselves. The cops help those who go undercover for other kids.
So which brings us to segment 3 and enter the final boss of this episode. Yes, there's a second stage to this sicko fight. Fuck. And that the final boss is played by one of my favorite TV character actors, Garrett Dillahunt, who you might remember as the psychotic geologist and rapist from HBO's Deadwood. He's a great choice if you want a villain on a TV show. So they set up the apartment with like closed circuit cameras, and they're watching it from the other room, and the mother and her son now have to have a nice normal dinner with 2 pedophiles who are one of whom is trying to buy her son. And they're like, you just got to keep it together, lady. This is an unstable woman who's been charged with assault twice since this episode started, and they're about to put her with a knife in a room with the man who had been raping her son and another man who wants to buy her son. So wouldn't you believe it? They hand over the flash drive and they make the bust, but not before Rosie Perez stabs her soon-to-be ex-husband. And then once again, it's like they should not have let that many sharp objects in the room of this.
Yeah.
Felix, one of our other favorite recurring motifs, which this is kind of adjacent to, is that like they'll be walking out like, some scumbag who's not the perp or something, like walking them out of the police station after questioning. And then they always like intersect at the elevators with like the dead kid's parents or something. And it becomes like a combustible situation. There's like a fight or something. And it's like, God, we got to figure out a way for this to stop happening.
Over the course of the show, at least 50 people have been shot to death in the SVU precinct.
Yeah,
They're like, we've got to stop letting people bring guns in here.
It's like the SVU precinct is probably the least secure building in New York. You could walk in there with a fucking bazooka.
I'm gonna skip to the end here because like basically it becomes the trial part of the episode, and the defense attorney on this episode, played by Jerry Ryan, who you might remember as 7 of 9 from Star Trek Voyager, and also the former wife of the disgraced Illinois politician whose sexcapades with her paved the way for Barack Obama to become
a little
our
prescient
44th
that
president.
she was in the sex crime show.
So basically, like the trial segment of the show, she tries again, totally ludicrous. She plans to plead not guilty based on the defendant's civil rights, and tries to make a court case out of the idea that adult sexual relationships with children are normal and harmless. And the judge just simply goes, "I'll allow it," which is like, that's another my favorite trope of mine is like the judge and anything where they just go, "I'll allow it." And like the big climax of the show is that the defense attorney has Rosie Perez on the stand and is like trying to make her out to look like a bad mother. And Rosie Perez breaks down and goes, "That monster raped my son every night for 2 years." And then Jerry Ryan goes, "You have a lot of blame for everyone but yourself." And the climax of the show is that Corey, the child, like interrupts the trial to just be like, "She's a good mom. I love her, and that man abused me. He's bad." And
BD Wong going totally off the cuff because he's like, "What? It offends my humanity as a gay man to have
and a psychiatrist
to have homosexuality compared to pedophilia, DSM, blah blah blah." He brings the kid in for this like unruly thing, which the idea that like it didn't immediately result in a mistrial. This kid just screaming in open court like he raped me.
They're like, "I'm instructing the jury to forget everything about that young boy's emotional plea."
Yeah, usually like the judges on this show, there's a lot of like sicko lib judges who are like implied to be holdover appointees from the 70s, where it's like the stuff they'll usually allow and declare mistrial over. It'll be like, actually, I'm ruling that it's in the defendant's constitutional rights that he gets to live with his victim during the trial. But for some reason, this is just like, okay.
So, I mean, like, justice is served at the end of every episode. Garrett Dillahunt gets 3,000 years in jail for his child rape empire.
Which were all hidden inside like the metadata of otherwise benign images.
Yeah, steganography is that's what he's doing there. But yeah, again, just for the for a judge allowing a pedophile to claim that it's his civil rights are being violated because his civil right to have sex with children, for that and the scene where they send a victim of child abuse undercover with their own abuser to entice the king pedophile, that's why I chose this episode, because of how fucking unbelievable it was. But I thought that's a good starter SVU episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Brag about molesting kids, and the minute you're caught, you all cry like the little bitches that you are.
My organization promotes the protection of the true love between children and adults.
Son of a bitch, I'm gonna fix you right now so you can't love any more kids.
You can't intimidate me! Someday you and everyone else are gonna have to accept people like me.
I'll accept you when you're dead.
Leave me alone. You've got nothing on me.
Oh, yeah? I got your flash drive. That's it? No porn, you sure?
Just 3 cheesy pictures. Totally innocuous.
This doesn't make sense. Why would O'Donnell give Banks these pictures?
I didn't get it either, so I dug a little deeper and found computer code hidden in a pixel. I cracked it, opened a secret file, and found all these pictures.
Pervert's pot of gold at the end of the digital rainbow.
There's got to be 1,000 pictures here.